Between the Roth IRA, Roth 401k, and Mega Backdoor Roth, things can get a little confusing. Keep listening as we break down all of the different Roth accounts and who should consider each one. Hello, and welcome to the Wealth Minded MD podcast with your money best friends. I'm Dr. Alicia Taylor.
And I'm Dr. Brittany Halford.
And of course, we're here to help you build wealth and make good money decisions so you can create the life you desire with more control over your time.
Before we dive into the episode, I want to take a moment to highlight a financial planning company that really impressed me. Bonafide Finance. Alicia and I recently met with the founder, Ben Martnick, and let me tell you, his approach to financial planning is different in all the right ways.
Yeah, that's right. Ben doesn't just want to grow your money. He wants to make sure your investments actually align with your life goals. And if that wasn't good enough, Ben is not only a certified financial planner, but he's also one of the smartest people I've met. He is the go-to for student loan strategy and tax planning, two areas most advisors overlook, especially for high-income earners. Ben is one of the only people I know that can actually do the calculations to help you figure out if you should file your taxes separately or jointly with your spouse, and also tell you how it might impact your student loan payments. Plus, him and his team will also file your individual tax returns for you and provide tax strategy throughout the year.
What I also love is he's fee only. So you always know exactly what you're paying for, and you don't have to worry about his company selling you products or charging you extra fees or commissions.
So if you want advice that's honest, strategic, and tailored to you, check out bonafidefinance.com/wealthmindedmd. Him and his team specialize in helping doctors and high-income earners build their net worth in all the right ways. Email him today at hello@bonafidefinance.com, and don't forget to tell him we sent you.
All right, Alicia, tell me what's going on in the ATL in your life?
Yeah, so I love this time of the year. I am watching a ton of sports, specifically college sports, actually. I love college basketball, whether it's women's college basketball or men's college basketball. I went to Duke for undergrad, so go Blue Devils. Went to Florida for med school, so go Gators. And both of those schools are pretty good at basketball. And so I love it. Also, used to work at UCLA, so I've been rooting for UCLA. And between that, my basketball watching TV schedule has been quite fun. And so I've been having a great time. But then also at work, I started a new cohort of a finance curriculum where I'm teaching. This cohort is nurses and nurse practitioners who are getting a doctorate in health administration, if you will. So they're taking on some sort of leadership role within their institution or hoping to, and they are getting a doctorate. And I have been brought in to teach them some financial wellness sessions once or twice a month. And so earlier this week was one of my first sessions. And I was a little nervous, not because I haven't done this before. I've taught this a bunch of times, but just, new cohort. You hope they resonate with the material and whatever. This is my first time actually having worksheets and guides to kind of go along with the things that I'm teaching. So there's group exercises and discussion points and all of the things. I printed out materials and I was like, okay, we're going to get a binder, and each month or each section, we're going to add more to it. And I was super jazzed up, and I just hope that they felt my energy, if you will. And they did. It was great. I was like, oh my gosh, did I prepare too much information? Not enough information. But one of the cool things was one of the exercises I had them do was define success for themselves and define what they wanted their life to look like 10 years from now and 30 years from now in all of these different facets. Where do they want to live? How much do they want to work? Just all of these different things. What are some of the milestones that they want to hit? Is travel important to them? Where do they want to go? And I had them fill in these sheets for themselves about the things that they wanted. And then I was like, one of the things that helps me is listening to other people, because maybe I didn't think about something that someone else thought of. And I'm like, oh my gosh, let me add that too. Or maybe someone else had an idea that helped me think about things in an entirely new way. And so people were sharing and we were bouncing ideas off each other. And it was just a very lively discussion that ended up going over time, which I always pat myself on the back because I'm like, okay, although I went over time because people were engaged. So anyway, it made me feel great if you couldn't hear the passion in my voice about it.
Good job, Alicia. I'm very excited for you to have that opportunity. And the fact that I've done some coaching with nurses, but never in a large scale, There's so much need for financial education. And typically, I don't know what the percentages are, but there are a lot more women nurses than there are male nurses, but male nurses actually still make more. It's like, how do we help them to become more financially savvy to negotiate an empowered way? And so this is lovely. I'm happy to hear it. I'm happy that you went over time. You got all your worksheets, your spreadsheets, your discussion points, people engaged, and hopefully that engagement transcends some of the taboo that we have about money and they continue to have those discussions even outside of your workshop. So good job, girl. Good job.
I'm taking it. I receive it.
Oh my goodness. Well, Alicia, it's that time of the year. And I think you would be proud of me because I got our backdoor Roth IRA conversions done before 2025 was over. Now,
Oh,
I was pushing the deadline. I was calling Fidelity and, for my husband's conversion because the money hadn't settled in the account yet. And I'm like, can you just expedite this for the end of the year? So I'm happy that I was able to get that done. But I know that you love all things Roths and there's a lot of confusion around Roths. So thank you for scripting this episode for us so that we can have this conversation and hopefully we can clear any clouds of confusion that our listeners have about this topic.
yeah, let's dive on in. So, when you are investing and you are putting money in different accounts, usually, broadly speaking, there are two kinds of accounts, right? There are accounts that give you some sort of tax advantage, and there are accounts that do not. And the accounts that give you some sort of tax advantage usually are retirement accounts. So, maybe your work 401k, your work 403b, maybe if you have your own business, it's a solo 401k or a SEP IRA, or maybe it's your own individual retirement account. So, there's all these different accounts that have some sort of tax advantage. And when it comes to these accounts that have some sort of tax advantage, you really have to delve into each account to figure out what the tax advantage is, right? You're going to save taxes in some way. The question is how. In traditional accounts or pre-tax accounts, the way you are saving money in taxes is that any money that you put into the account during that calendar year, you don't have to pay taxes on right then. The money grows tax-free, and you only pay taxes on the money when you withdraw the money or take the money out of the account, usually in retirement. A Roth account is different. A Roth account, you pay the taxes up front, then you invest the money grows tax-free, and then you can take the money out of the account tax-free. And so Roth versus traditional or Roth versus pre-tax is just really the timing on when you're going to pay taxes on the money. For a lot of people, they've heard of these accounts, right? Roth IRA, Roth 401k, Roth 403b, but they can be confusing and they all kind of have different nuances. And so I thought today we could kind of break some of these down so that our listeners could better clarify which accounts, which Roth accounts specifically, they may want to consider. So I have a few different scenarios and I was hoping to get your opinion on them as well, because I think that they relate well to the topics. So my first scenario is kind of like a two-parter. So I teach a lot of investing and finance and money management to people in training as well. And sometimes residents or those in school will ask me, hey, Leisha, should I invest money in my work 401k or should I invest money in a Roth IRA? I don't have enough money to max out both. I don't have enough time to manage both. So I'm going to pick one account. Which account should I choose? So that's a question I get. And then other times I meet attendings who are just confused and they're like, I've heard about this Roth IRA, but I'm not sure if I should use it or not. In that scenario where we have people who are in training and wondering if a Roth IRA might be a good account for them, I thought that maybe we could discuss that. And so one of the things that I like about a Roth IRA is that it is a tax advantaged account where you can invest money and it'll grow tax free over time. And you do not have to pay taxes on that money when you take it out of the account. And having that sort of tax protection is very beneficial. And so not only do you get some tax protection, but because it is an account that you are managing on your own, unless you're hiring someone to manage it, then you could also invest in more things. And so another benefit of a Roth IRA is that you can invest in the things you want to. When you're only utilizing a 401k or 403b at your job, you can only invest in the options that your employer has available to you. But when you open an IRA, you have way more investing options available to you, right? One benefit of a Roth IRA is its tax advantage status, the fact that it's going to grow tax-free and you can withdraw the money from the account tax-free. Another advantage of a Roth IRA is the fact that you have more investing options. And I think probably the biggest advantage to me of a Roth IRA for someone who is in training is its flexibility. The fact that you can take out your contributions from the account at any time. When you contribute directly into a Roth IRA, you have the freedom to take out your contributions at any time. Now, the profits that your contributions make are supposed to stay in the account until retirement. But because you can take your contributions out of the account at any time, it kind of serves as a backup emergency fund. So let me give you an example. Let's say you put $1,000 in a Roth IRA and that $1,000 grows to $1,500, right? So it increased by $500. The $500 that it increased by has to stay in the account until retirement. But technically speaking, you could take out your contribution. So you could take out the $1,000 at any time when you contribute directly into a Roth IRA. And so I really love the Roth IRA for that reason, especially for those who are in training, because I think it serves as a backup emergency fund. And so if you were somebody who was looking for more investing options, if you were somebody who was looking for some tax diversification, some tax advantage options, if you were somebody who was looking for flexibility, then I think you should strongly consider a Roth IRA, especially if you're under those income thresholds into which you can contribute directly to the account. Brittany, what do you think? What do you think about residents and people who are considering a Roth IRA?
Yeah, Alicia, you know I love Roth IRAs. And I think this is one of my biggest failures as a trainee because I contributed to a traditional 401k. And I'm like, okay, I fixed it later, but I had to pay a lot more taxes. So I really think that this is a great move for resident physicians, for trainees, because they can contribute directly. And as you mentioned, the direct contribution account as it stands right now has a lot more flexibility than the backdoor Roth that I know we'll talk about later. And you have to think about the tax implications. This is a post-tax contribution to this account. And when you're in your attending years, you're going to pay a lot more in taxes, trust and believe. So it not only saves money because it allows for your money to grow tax-free, it also saves you a lot of money because you're paying less taxes on it now. And I like the emergency fund option that you could take out your contributions. But a lot of trainees also say, well, I want to save for a house. I want to get married. I want to do all of these things. So this could be a way that you could save for those things and have the option to put money in at a lower tax bracket, allow it to grow, keep all of that growth there, and then take out your contributions later for whatever life milestone you're hoping to save for. So I like this option. I think it's great for anyone who's under the income threshold to kind of prioritize this after whatever match you get. If you get a match, then you want to definitely do the match first up to that match limit and then put the money in a Roth IRA.
Yeah. So what you're saying is, hey, Leisha, I love Roth IRAs too. When you're comparing, should I invest in my work 401k versus a Roth IRA? The question you got to ask yourself first is, do I get a match or extra free money for investing in my work 401k or work 403b? If the answer is yes, you get a match, then you want to prioritize doing that. But if you don't get a match or you've already contributed enough to get the match, then you might want to consider your Roth IRA because of the reasons that we stipulated, right? The tax diversification, the tax advantage, the fact that you can take out your contributions at any time, the fact that your investments are going to grow tax-free and you can withdraw them tax-free. All of those things are beneficial. All right. Our next type of Roth account is something called the backdoor Roth IRA. So what is this? It is very similar to your Roth IRA. The only difference is that when you make over a certain amount, which I believe for this year might be around 170 something thousand for an individual, you can no longer contribute directly into a Roth IRA. And so you have to contribute indirectly through a process that we call the backdoor. And what this means is you take money from your bank account and you put that money in a traditional IRA. You let the money settle. Basically, the brokerage has to verify, like, yes, you do have the money in your bank account and yes, it has been transferred. And once the money settles, sometimes it takes up to a few days or so, then you literally move that money from the traditional IRA to the Roth IRA. And that process is called the backdoor Roth IRA, right? So it goes from your bank account to the traditional IRA and then from the traditional IRA to the Roth IRA. Why you got to go through these steps is a whole IRS thing. But the point is, there's an extra step involved. So scenario number 2, I had a friend who asked me, she was like, Leisha, this is a lot of work. I am already maxing out my work 403b. Why do I then need to do this backdoor Roth IRA process? I'm investing money. I'm investing up to the met. I'm investing like 20 something thousand. She's like, I'm proud of myself. Why are you telling me that I need to do more? Why are you telling me that I should do more? This seems like enough. And, my answer to her was that, yes, there are benefits to utilizing your work 403b or work 401k. We just talked about it. If you get a match, you definitely want to utilize that account, your work 401k, work 403b, in order to get that match. For those of us who are in high tax brackets or pay a lot of money in taxes, the more you contribute to those pre-tax 401ks, pre-tax 403b accounts, the less amount you're going to pay on your taxes this year. For sure, that is beneficial. Check, check. But then after that, you may still want to invest more money. The general rule of thumb is to try to invest around 20% of your gross income for retirement. Some people believe that number should be closer to 30%. Some people think that you might be okay with 15%, but somewhere around 20% is like a good amount. And oftentimes, a lot of physicians, a lot of high income earners cannot invest 20% into their work 401k or work 403b because there's a limit. If you're a physician that's making $300,000 a year, then 20% of that is 60 grand. Well, you can't put 60 grand yourself as a contribution into your work 401k or work 403b. The max is around $23,000. And so how are you going to invest the remaining money? One of those ways to do that is to continue to use other accounts that also have a tax advantage. And one of those accounts being a Roth IRA. And so part of the reason why you might invest in the backdoor Roth IRA if you're a physician and you're already maxing out your work 401k or your work 403b is because you want to invest even more money and you need another tax advantage account to do that. Another reason why you might consider going through this backdoor Roth IRA process is for tax diversification. So remember, when you are putting money in your work 401k or your work 403b, that money is invested pre-tax. So that means you haven't paid the taxes on it yet. It's going to grow tax-free. But then once you withdraw that money in retirement, you're going to have to pay taxes on that money at that time. With a Roth IRA, because you pay the taxes up front, you will not have to pay taxes on the money when you take it out of the account. And so when you get to retirement age, there's probably going to be some times where you're going to want to be able to withdraw money from an account without having to pay taxes on it in retirement. And so you want some money in traditional accounts, aka pre-tax accounts, and some money in Roth accounts. So reason number one is just you need to invest more money, so you need another tax advantage account to do so. Reason number two is for some tax diversification in retirement. Reason number three is more control over your investments. Remember, we talked about how because it's an IRA, you have more investment options available to you than if you were only investing through your job. And so if you were someone, for example, who wanted to invest in real estate, REITs, or other kinds of investments, other kinds of index funds, you have oftentimes way more options available to you if you invest that money in an IRA. And so if you're a high income earner, if you're like my friend who's like, Leisha, I'm already doing the 403b at my job, you might want to consider also investing money in a Roth IRA. And because you make too much money to do so directly, you got to go through this backdoor process.
I love all of those reasons. And I would just add another one is as the accounts stand right now, there's no required minimum distributions for a Roth IRA. So what does that mean? That means that the government is not mandating that you're taking money out of that account. So you can leave that as a nest egg to your heirs. And whatever investments you have, they get a step up in basis. That means that if you bought the shares, whatever you purchase, Alicia's talking about more flexibility, more opportunities, different options. So say you purchase, let's just say Apple stock for $5, but you have that invested for 50 years. And then now the cost of the share is $500. Your heirs are not paying taxes on that differential, that $495 that you have now in, or that they would have in capital gains when they sell those shares. No, now that means that they inherited at that $500. And so they are not also going to have a huge tax burden on this money. So I like to think about Roth IRA as one of my like legacies. This is something that I'm leaving behind to my heirs. I'm doing this, yes, for me, because I want tax diversification. I want options, right? I like options, but I also am leaving this for my family to have more options. If you only keep your money in traditional accounts, like you are unable to do that. So that's another really great thing that I love about Roth IRAs. And Leisha, to your point about, you're not going to be able to save 20% if you are a high income earner. So you have to figure out how to use a few accounts in order to get that amount invested. And as you're saying the 20%, I was like, oh, you know what? I need to go back and do a projection of what our income is going to be this year to ensure I have systems automated enough for me to do this process, for me to save enough. And do I need to configure, change things around based upon our projected income? So I would challenge any high income earner who's already maxing out their 401k to also think about what is that number, that target for 20% of my income, and what accounts am I going to use to reach that target?
I love it. I love it. A few caveats with the backdoor Roth IRA process. Some people have tried to do this for the first time and they run into quote unquote issues, right? Issue number one is, hey, Leisha, I transferred the money from my bank account to my traditional IRA. And while it was quote unquote settling, it earned interest. And so now Although the limit for 2026 is 7,500, I have $7,501 or $7,500.86. Oh my gosh, am I going to go to jail because I am now contributing more than the limit for 2026? And we're laughing because this is a common problem. If this is your first year doing the backdoor Roth IRA, you will have this quote unquote problem. And we hear it all the time. It's a telltale sign that this is somebody's first time doing it. The answer to that problem is it's not a problem. If your $7,500 earned interest and turned to $7,500.86 or 7501, it's fine. Just move all of that, including the interest, to your Roth IRA account. What will happen is you will pay taxes on the extra interest. So if it gained $1 in interest, you'll pay taxes on that $1 extra in interest. If it gained 36 cents in interest, you will pay taxes on the 36 cents. So basically, it's not a big problem. Just transfer it all over. Another question or issue that people run into is, hey, Leisha, what about this pro rata rule when I'm doing the backdoor Roth IRA? I thought you can't do this if you have any money in a traditional IRA or a SEP IRA, and I have a lot of money in a traditional IRA. When I moved jobs, I moved the money from my old 401k into my IRA. Or when I started my own business, I opened up a SEP IRA. How do I get the money out of these traditional IRAs and SEP IRAs so that I don't violate the pro rata rule? And my answer to them is I recommend they consider doing 3 different things. Number 1 is transferring the money from their traditional IRA or their SEP IRA or whatever into their work 401k accounts. That will allow you to move the money out of your SEP IRA or traditional IRA so that you can complete the backdoor Roth IRA process without paying any taxes. So that's option number 1. Option number 2 is if you have a business, or even if you don't have a real corporation or anything, if you make any sort of 1099 income, whether it is from doing grand rounds, selling stuff on eBay or Facebook or whatever, if you make any sort of side income, open up a solo 401k and move the money from your traditional IRA or SEP IRA into the solo 401k. So that's a way that you can sort of not violate that pro rata rule. And the third option is to just convert it. So you can take money that you have in a traditional IRA and just pay the taxes on it and convert it to a Roth IRA. And so if that was confusing, just shoot us an email. I'm happy to clarify for you. But essentially, in order to do the backdoor Roth IRA process, there is this pro rata rule that you cannot violate. And that pro rata rule just basically says, hey, if you are going to do this process, you have to make sure that you do not already have a chunk of money sitting in a traditional IRA or a SEP IRA. And so if you do, you have to move it.
Yeah. And Alicia, this is a great point. And so I will add some experience here because we've made this mistake with having a SEP IRA. So one of the other options I would say is delay. Maybe you don't do your backdoor Roth IRA this year because you talk to your tax accountant and you're like, oh, I have to pay $30,000 in taxes. I don't have $30,000 to pay in taxes. Because when you do this, you're going from traditional pre-tax money and you're converting it over and putting a post-tax contribution into this account. So that means that there has to be some paid taxes out when you do go from pre-tax to post-tax, right? And so if you don't have the money to pay in taxes, then you, okay, well, you know what? I'm not going to do it. Or you meet with your tax accountant and say, I have this amount of money to pay in taxes. How much can I do? What would be the best? What would be the tax implications of doing a partial conversion? I don't really like the idea of a partial conversion, but it could be an option. The other thing to do is to plan out your future. I know for me, after having KJ, I went on leave. And so my earnings for that year had decreased significantly. And that was when we did a Roth conversion. I transferred old 401k into a Roth IRA and we did that. And then the same thing for my husband's SEP IRA, you know, when we had to do that conversion. So think about, okay, what is going to be a low income year? It could be, okay, I'm listening to this episode. I'm attending this year. Well, if you want to do it for 2025, you're like, I'm attending in 2026, but for half the year I was a resident. So let me do it now because there's never going to be a time in my future that I'm going to earn the least amount that I've earned. So you want to do it in those low income years and kind of think about that. The other thing that I would add is the solo 401k is a great idea. And that's something that we have done for my husband's SEP IRA. Now we're running into an issue though, because we've purchased a business that has employees. So now there's going to be some conflict with the solo 401k. So again, just think about what your future is. Do you want to go into private practice where you have employees? Will you have to open up a 401k for them? I think most people don't run into these issues that we're running into, right? So I think a solo 401k is going to be a viable option for you as far as a rollover, but just think about what your future holds, because if at any point you have employees, then you're going to have a violation with some of the regulations regarding a solo 401k, which might create additional hurdles or problems for you to solve.
Yeah. So if you've got a big business with multiple employees that don't include your spouse, then we got to maybe think of a different different option. Okay, the next scenario was I was talking to my dad, who is still working. I do not know why. I've been trying to get him to retire, but these men are stubborn. Anyway, my dad informed me when we were talking about money one day. He goes, Leisha, I make sure to maximize out my Roth account at my job. And I was like, your Roth account? And he was like, yeah, I'm doing my Roth account instead. When he told me about it, I just paused for a second and I thought, that's interesting. My dad makes a decent amount of money. And I would think that, doing the pre-tax account, doing the traditional accounts at his job would save him more money in taxes that year. But my dad's in his mid to late 60s. And so because he's nearing retirement, maybe that strategy is slightly different. And so that prompted me to want to talk about the Roth 401k or the Roth 403b option that a lot of people have at their jobs. So if you're somebody who wants to contribute money in your work retirement accounts, at many jobs, you have the option of making that contribution pre-tax or making that contribution Roth. And for a lot of us, high income earners in our peak earnings years, we select the pre-tax option. We're like, yep, I want to save money in taxes this year on money that I'm contributing to that account. That makes sense. However, for somebody who is nearing retirement, it actually might make sense to do what my dad's doing. And that is to select the Roth account instead. And the reason for that is because of something, Brittany, you had already brought up, which is the RMD problem. RMD, the required minimum distribution problem. So with the passage of the Secure Act 2.0, you no longer have to do RMDs from Roth accounts, including the Roth 401k. So what is an RMD? So basically the government says if you're contributing money through your work retirement account, remember, you're not paying the taxes on the money when you make the contribution, the money grows tax-free, and then you're supposed to pay taxes on the money when you take it out of the account. Well, the government says, hey, if you haven't taken money out of this account by a certain age, we are going to require you to take a certain amount out of the account so we can get our money from the taxes you owe us. Those are called required minimum distributions. And a lot of people who are retired, they don't want to be told by the government, hey, you need to take out $100,000 out of this account each year. Maybe they don't want to spend $100,000 out of the account or whatever. And so that's what's called the RMD problem. And when you utilize a Roth 401k instead of the pre-tax 401k, you do not have that RMD problem. And so for people that are nearing retirement who think that they might have this RMD issue, they might select a Roth 401k. Alternatively, if you are somebody who is in a low tax year, maybe you are still a resident, or maybe you only worked for part of the year because you went on a maternity leave, Brittany, as you mentioned, maybe that might be a time to do a Roth 401k during that particular year. And so if you're somebody who's in one of those scenarios, that might be your opportunity to do a Roth 401k or a Roth 403b instead of the traditional at your job.
Yeah, I love that. And, I consider this often as what percentage, because we have the Roth option, what percentage should I do in Roth? Should I do any percentages in Roth? And I don't know if the calculations are right. So I just kind of choose some number and say, okay, I'm going to put a little bit more in Roth. I think this could be a great option for the first group of people or second group of people that we talked about who want to do a backdoor Roth IRA, but they have money in a traditional account and maybe they don't want to pay taxes, right? So using a Roth 401k gives you an opportunity to have some of that tax diversification in the years that you don't want to do that conversion because you haven't saved up enough for that tax bill or you don't want to pay that tax bill. So I think that that's another great way for you to consider how to get some Roth money into an account. Alicia, I wish I had a better formula for calculating how much you should do Roth, if you should do any Roth, and because we don't know what the tax implications are going to be in the future. So there's a lot of uncertainty. So I just try to make sure that I'm filling all of the buckets, like my different tax buckets to some degree so that it gives me more flexibility and options in the future.
Yeah, yeah. I like that because as we mentioned, for us, a general rule of thumb is that you want to try to invest around 20% of your gross income. And sometimes you get part of that number from your retirement match. Sometimes you get part of that number from maxing out your 401k or 403b at your job. Sometimes you get part of that number from doing your backdoor Roth IRA, but then you still might have some money left over that you want to invest, right? If your goal is to invest 60k, maybe you've hit 50k from those accounts, but you still got another 10k to go. What else can you utilize? What else can you do? And when you're trying to invest that money, as you mentioned, maybe you put half of it in pre-tax accounts and then the other half of it is in Roth accounts or whatever. But one more account that you may want to consider is something called the Mega Backdoor Roth. So what the heck is that? So if you are somebody who has your own business or you make some 1099 income, you do some extra shifts at the urgent care, you sell stuff on eBay, you give grand rounds talks and they pay you, you speak at conferences and then they pay you, you drive Uber or DoorDash or whatever it is, right? If you have a side business or you make some sort of 1099 income, you have the ability to open up a solo 401k. Most solo 401ks, if you went to a brokerage like Fidelity or Vanguard or whatever, they're going to be pre-tax or they might be Roth, right? And so you have to choose, do you want a pre-tax solo 401k or do you want a Roth solo 401k? But another option that not as many people know about is you can customize your solo 401k. And that is exactly what I did. And so you can customize your solo 401k to be able to do something called the Mega Backdoor Roth. What is that? So what that allows you to do is essentially have three different solo 401ks. You have a pre-tax solo 401k, an after-tax solo 401k, and a Roth solo 401k. And what you do is you can contribute up to the allowed amount in pre-tax. So usually it's around 20% of your business's net income. So you can do that pre-tax, for example. And then if you want to invest additional money, you can use that money to invest to make an after-tax contribution that you then convert to Roth. So essentially the Mega Backdoor Roth account, when you set it up in this customized way, allows you to stuff even more money into Roth accounts than you would have otherwise. And the cool thing is, even if you don't have a solo 401k, even if you don't have your own business, a lot of big employers like academic centers will have these accounts that you can even do this at your own job. So essentially what you would do if you had this available to you at your job, let's say you worked for an academic institution or a medical school or whatever, you would put the allowed employee contribution, which I believe for this year is around like, what is it, 24,500, something along those lines? Yes. So you would put that as a pre-tax contribution. And then you could stuff even more money up until I think the $60,000 or $70,000 limit. You can make that an after-tax contribution that you then convert to Roth. So while the average person is maybe only able to contribute 23,500 or 24,500 into their work retirement accounts, you could contribute $60,000 or $70,000 into the account. And so that is this process called the Mega Backdoor Roth. I realize that this can sound confusing. Some people like myself do this through our solo 401k from our business. Brittany, you are nodding your head. They may have this option available to them at their job. But the point is setting up a Mega Backdoor Roth or doing a Mega Backdoor Roth conversion basically is a way for you to get even more money into Roth tax protected accounts.
Yeah, Leisha, I don't think all employers have it, right? But if your employer has it, this is a fantastic option. This is a fantastic option. And so I would encourage you all to think about how you could put more money into those accounts. As we talk about investing and using the various accounts, you also want to examine your cash flow. Right? How much money do I have at the end of the month? And how much money would I like to have? How much money do I need to have? Because you don't want to lock all of your money up in retirement accounts. But if you have the cash flow, you're not meeting that benchmark for 20%, then I think that this is a really great option to utilize and something if your employer does not have it, then to advocate for this option. Remember when you're making the contributions, also there's a maximum limit for the entire account. As Leisha said, I think it's 72,000 for this year, but you want to make sure that your employer match in addition to your contribution doesn't exceed that amount. So you'll be able to put a little bit more in there to help you along your way. Well, Alicia, this was a great episode. I'm excited. And I need to go back to my employer to say, hey, do you have this Mega Backdoor Roth? Now, I don't know if I'll use it, but I like options. So I need to see. I haven't seen it in any of our benefits plans right now, but maybe something to put on my to-do list. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about fun money. How are you spending your money for fun?
I am going to dinner with my girlfriends this weekend. I am so excited. We try to make it a point to meet up at least once a month. And so one of my girlfriends, she was like, oh, I've been waiting to try this new restaurant. And so I am excited. We're all kind of in different stages of our lives. I'm in a relationship. One of my friends is single. The other one is married. And so we're in different stages, but it's so fun to kind of like live vicariously through them. I hear about fun dating stories and then I hear about husband problems. And then I hear about, I have another friend that has a kid and she's like, girl, I'm not sleeping, a little delirious. And so anyway, it gives me a chance to kind of like love on them. They get time away from their screaming babies, or in some cases their needy husbands, or in some cases their very colorful dating life, and just get an opportunity to laugh and fellowship over some great food. And so I am very much looking forward to dinner with the girls.
Yes, I love that. I need to do that more often. So I am spending money on some new sneakers, which is kind of crazy because the only shoes that I really buy, like tennis shoes, are running shoes. And then I just like reuse my old running shoes as my everyday sneakers. But we got an invitation to go to this Embrace event. And if you all are unaware, the Embrace is like this memorial of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Mrs. Coretta Scott King, inspired by their embrace after Dr. King won the Nobel Peace Prize. And so it's this huge statue here in the Boston Commons. And so there's the event celebrating Dr. Martin Luther King and Mrs. Coretta Scott King in Boston. And it's a sneaker event. It's like a sneaker ball. And I'm like, okay, I have the dress, but I don't have the sneakers. And do I want to wear my running shoes to this event? So I bought some new sneakers that are gold and like a little jazzy to go with my gown.
I love it. I love it. I've seen some photos of sneaker balls. It's always really cool. Oftentimes you see women in fancy dresses and heels, but the sneaker ball, they're in fancy dresses and sneakers, and everybody's feet are going to be comfortable at the end
Yes.
of the night.
Yes, I'm gonna dance, because no more sitting down and holding up the wall because my feet hurt. I think the guys have enough sneakers. I'm excited to see how the different women really jazz up their shoes to accommodate.
We got to take some photos and show us. All right. Well, hopefully this was helpful in terms of the different Roth accounts. If you have questions, feel free to ask. And again, friendly reminder that if you are someone who needs help on your taxes, help with your investments, or help with your student loans, don't hesitate to reach out to Ben Martnick at Bonafide Finance.
Hello, everybody. It's me, Brooke. I'm recording a little disclaimer for my mommy, Dr. Brittany Halford, and her friend, Dr. Lisa Taylor. Just so you know, they're not financial advisors, tax professionals, lawyers, or financial planners. Everything you hear is for education and entertainment. It's not strict financial advice, So use your best judgment, chat with a tax professional, and all those other people that you need to talk to. Thanks for tuning in today. Keep cruising on your journey to wealth and wellness. Bye-bye.